He was supposed to have arrived in Rome around 9 o'clock in the morning on a regularly scheduled flight from America, but we got word that his plane had left very, very late due to fog, and then had an emergency stop in Maine for mechanical troubles. There, after hours, they ended up changing planes, which had to stop in Amsterdam, another delay, and they finally arrived in Rome 13 hours late. Took them another hour and a half to get their luggage and arrive at the North American College, where I let them in a little before midnight. I was almost as tired as he was, and eager to show him to his room and get to bed, but oh no. Tim, Cardinal Keeler, says to me, "These two priests were on my plane for the entire ordeal. They were supposed to go on to Florence, but it's way too late now. Can you put them up?" I said, "Sure, Your Eminence. I'll be happy to prepare 2 guest rooms. And then, "We haven't said Mass yet, so can you get us the chapel and set it up?" And I said, "Absolutely, Your Eminence. And after that, of course, we'll have some cheese, crackers, and a cold beer, because I got to tell you about this challenging day." Left unsaid is that there were bound to be photographs, right? There's a snapshot, my brothers and sisters, the indefatigable, friendly, ever unruffled, gentleman of faith and charity, William Henry Cardinal Keeler. He it was who shared with me the quote from Pope St. John Paul II he claimed as his favorite, and it also became mine. "Love for Jesus and his church must be the passion of your life." He not only knew the quote, he lived it and radiated it. Love for Jesus and his church must be the passion of your life. And today, this morning, Premier See of Baltimore, with Archbishop Laurie and Cardinal O'Brien, with his beloved home of Harrisburg, with so many bishops he served so faithfully in almost every office possible in our conference, with family and friends, with Jewish and Christian colleagues who revered his person and his sterling ecumenical and interreligious work, and yes, even with the Apostolic See and the Church Universal, we all confess our faith in Jesus for his own saving death on the cross and resurrection from the dead, a faith which drove the passion of William Keeler. We seek mercy upon his noble priestly soul, and we thank God for the gift he was to us and to the church. Love for Jesus and his church is the passion of your life. We commend to the Lord today a man, a believer, a disciple, a priest, a bishop who had that passion, a drive, an excitement for the work of the evangelist, his episcopal motto from St. Paul to Timothy, this afternoon's second reading. Those he consistently and sincerely called our Jewish friends, many of whom are here this afternoon, sensed this passion and love. No wonder, as he stepped down as chair of the Jewish Catholic Dialogue 8 years ago, they applied to him that passage from Deuteronomy, proclaimed first in our liturgy of the Word this afternoon, extolling a man in love with the Lord, our God, a love hardly superficial, but engraved on his heart, repeated consistently, taught to all of us, his spiritual children, placed over the door of his soul. For William Henry Cardinal Keeler, this Lord he was to love with his whole heart, soul, and strength, became incarnate in Jesus Christ, who remains alive in his church. Thus, the love of Jesus and his church, which was the passion of his life. When it was time for him to step down as co-chair of the National Jewish Catholic Dialogue, he graciously telephoned asking me to assume his role. I had rehearsed my no. Having just arrived in New York and obviously preoccupied, but he described the duty with such zest and excitement that by the time he was done, I thought he was inviting me to a game at Camden Yards with all the cold beer I could drink and the hot dogs kosher I could eat. And I ended up said, Your Eminence, thank you, you bet. I'll be thrilled to. Because his exuberance for the work so intrigued me. The excitement, the eagerness, the passion that he had for the work of an evangelist flowing from his love of Jesus and his church. Duties and committees and travel and meetings, building, repair, and restoration like your beloved Venerable Basilica, projects that usually try the patience of most of us and tempt us to dodge them, were all joyfully and happily embraced by William Keeler. For the same reason, folks, a man will work himself to exhaustion for love of his wife and his kids. Because for Cardinal Keeler, Jesus and his church were the passion of his life, were his family. Pope Francis recently offered a challenge to a group of bishops. He cautioned us about allowing our apostolic work to become dry or bureaucratic, impersonal duties added on in service to what might become a lifeless entity, not flowing from within, from a heart on fire for Jesus, his church, and his people. No, no, exclaimed the successor of the Prince of the Apostles. We serve Jesus alive in living stones, which build up his church, always embraced with the tenderness and care of a man in love with a bride whose beauty is ever ancient, ever new. Love for Jesus and his church is the passion of your life. It sure was yours. William Keeler. Did you notice that the gospel chosen for this funeral mass by the Cardinal, all the readings were, by the way, described the call of those very first disciples? As we listen, we behold those proto-apostles cast out to the deep. Give it all up with a dare and a drive and a dream, which could only be sparked by one divine. Up to the evening moments of your lives, Pope St. John Paul II urged priests, never lose the enthusiasm and excitement of that call you once heard long ago, come follow me. You never did lose that. Dear Father and Pastor, dear friend and example, and for that we thank God and trust that you, by his mercy, have heard his final invitation to eternal, loving, passionate union with Jesus in the church we call triumphant.